your wonderful talks,
Oh,
for the lockdown period has really helped all of us, and especially Savitri Veda and Sanatana Dharma,
oh,
and talks have
thank
really,
you.
really
Yeah.
helped us in our sadhana. So we are full of gratitude to you,
Yes.
and we
Thank you.
always look
Thank you.
forward to we always look forward to your talks every week, and that is helping us a lot. And Savitri Veda is just so.
Thank you. Thank you. It's all
Yeah, so it's 11:30. So Sandhya is going to chant Om Shanti Shanti.
okay.
Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Shantihi.
Thank you, Sandhya.
Thank you.
So I've explained to Alok Bhai how we conduct these workshops and what we've been doing recently. In fact, most of the lockdown, we have been going through the mother, and we're sort of nearing the end of chapter 6. And I also explained to Alok Bhai that 2 weeks ago when we had our workshop, we were reading some of the last paragraphs.
There are other great personalities of the Divine Mother, but they were more difficult to bring down and have not stood out in front with so much prominence in the evolution of the Earth Spirit. There are among them presences indispensable for the supramental realization. Most of all, one who is her personality of that mysterious and powerful ecstasy and ananda which flows from a supreme divine love. The ananda that alone can heal the gulf between the highest heights of the supramental spirit and the lowest abysses of matter. The ananda that holds the key of a wonderful divinest life and even now supports from its secrecies the work of all the other powers of the universe. But human nature, bounded, egoistic, and obscure, is inapt to receive these great presences or to support their mighty action. Only when the four have founded their harmony and freedom of movement in the transformed mind and life and body can those other rarer powers manifest in the earth movement and the supramental action become possible. For when her personalities are all gathered in her and manifested, and their separate working has been turned into a harmonious unity, and they rise in her to their supramental godheads, then is the Mother revealed as the supramental Mahashakti and brings pouring down her luminous transcendences from their ineffable ether. Then can human nature change into dynamic divine nature, because all the elemental lines of the supramental truth consciousness and truth force are strung together, and the harp of life is fitted for the rhythms of the eternal.
Yes. So, is there a question on? Yes. Is there a question on?
Yeah, so it was just to start off with what does Sri Aurobindo mean about these rarer other great personalities?
Yes. So this was asked to the mother, and there is a whole long, conversation centered around the other great personalities, especially the mysterious Ananda, You see, we talk about supramental, but in one of the passages, Mother says it is the divine love which transforms. So, what does the supramental truth consciousness do? It lays the base and foundation on which the divine love can have a complete play. It is Ananda is the origin, and love is the savior of the universe. But to receive this Ananda and love fully in our consciousness, there must be a base of truth. That's why we see from the first chapter onwards, Sri Aurobindo speaks about, falsehood and truth not being together and one has to reject. It's all so that we can lay the right base. If this base is not there and Ananda comes down, I mean, it has come down, let us say, in the life of Shri Krishna, he brought Ananda. But human nature not being ready, it doesn't receive it rightly. It enters into ego channels, it enters into desire, forms, and we know what it has become and tends to become. So we have to be prepared for that, and that's why the truth consciousness. So when Mother was asked that, these other great personalities, when are they going to come and about their coming, the Mother says, it was in 40s when this mysterious Ananda, of which he speaks here, some would identify as Radha, but let's talk about in the terms that Sri Aurobindo has, because again we have our mental formations immediately. I mean, all the original files have been corrupted. You see the serials and you understand that the Leela of Krishna and Radha have been reduced to a vital plane, whereas in their origin it is something so beautiful. So she wanted to come, but the conditions were not ready. And she waited, and Mother said that she continues to wait. She wants to come, but nobody is ready. So then, at that point of time in the 40s, when she wanted to come and nobody was ready, the Mother says very interestingly that I ended up blaming the inconscient. So she did not blame the sadhaks. She said people around were not receptive. But why they were not receptive? She went and saw that it is the inconscient, because of which human consciousness is in such a grip that it doesn't open to truth, it doesn't open to higher things. So a big battle started. It's a whole phase of the ashram life, and in that battle, it's one of the steps was when Sri Aurobindo drew the entire inconscient onto himself, like Shiva, swallowing poison, and withdrew from the physical body because there was no other way to grapple with it. And that's why the Mother gave a message that if the people were more receptive, then this wouldn't have happened. If Earth and humanity were more receptive, then this may not have been necessary. But eventually it was a strategic sacrifice. After which, ultimately, the truth consciousness did manifest or start the manifestation on 29th February 1956. But for Ananda, she was asked that what are the conditions required for it to manifest? She said, you have to be a super Parsifal, which means absolutely nothing to do with pleasure of any kind, because pleasure and Ananda are two poles. Pleasure is the most degraded version, and it's very simple to understand. It's not about asceticism. In fact, this is not a yoga of asceticism. It's like we can choose for a very, low kind of energy fuel to drive us. Low kind of energy fuel is desire and pleasure. Or we can upgrade it and choose a better and better and higher and a fuel which eventually leads to no pollution. So the same thing we can apply here, that pleasure and pain. Pain comes as a consequence. Pleasure is a highly degraded version. Originally there is only bliss, but it degrades into pleasure and brings as its consequence or a corrective, if I may say so, pain. So pain actually is a corrective that we are taking the wrong route, and it opens a door. So a complete freedom from pleasure, a complete renunciation of pleasure, but not renunciation with an ascetic point of view, but renunciation so that we can actually receive the ananda of existence, the bliss of existence. So this condition nobody could fulfill. And that's why the truth consciousness, which will eventually turn man to receive only the light of the truth. It will take away all these other things into which we are right now deeply engaged with. So then she also said that you should ask one more question. And the disciples are wondering. She said, then one of the disciples caught the vibration, and he said, "Mother, but she could have entered you." So that is a passage where the mother reveals about the work of the avatar. She says that, well, yes, she could have entered me, but if entering into me is not going to make any difference to others, why should she come? Because my utility, she uses that word, that my usefulness is only if others can receive it. But if they are not receptive, just for my own sake, I don't need anything. Exactly what Sri Aurobindo says, that I have no need of, Satchidanand or anything, because like Shri Krishna in the battlefield, he says, I have no need of any karma. But I am doing it because, for the march of mankind towards truth, towards light. So this mysterious personality, Ananda, which is the crown and apex of existence, will come eventually once truth consciousness has laid its base. That's how in Savitri also he says, but first high truth must set its foot on earth. Till that base is laid, and if Ananda comes prematurely, as Mother says, that eventually divine love will transform. But if there is lack of preparation, lack of receptivity, then the vessel will break down. So in ancient times, the rishis used to prepare themselves through tapas. So there are two ways of preparing the vessel. Any vessel which you have to prepare from its raw clay to the proper strong vessel, you have to pass it through fire. So there are two kinds of processes in that. One is a very conscious fire, which is tapas. Tapas is concentrated energy of spiritual endeavor. Tapasya has nothing to do with asceticism, shunning this, shunning that, but a one-pointed energy which is focused in every activity to discover the truth and to be driven by truth. In any way, even when we have a little conception of truth, doesn't matter. It's a very good starting point. Sincerity. So when we move in that direction, then this heat that accumulates, which normally we dissipate in all kinds of activities and things, it is this heat, this tapas, which bakes the vessel and makes it ready to receive the ananda. You see, the Vedic rishis, Somras is the ultimate, Godhead whom they invoked. The other way, which is not a desirable way, is through, suffering. So I put it little, semi-humorously, but it's a serious thing that we have bhoga and yoga. In between there is roga. So we have a choice to, either through yoga. Yoga means all these energies are yoked to something higher. Then the vessel, the patra gets prepared and ready. If we don't, then there is another passage through which we will be led, because it is the divine will, we can't help it. It is going to drive us towards perfection, intended perfection. But that choice is up to us whether we engage into a conscious process, or the process will take place through the power of clashing circumstances. So this mysterious personality is the Ananda, and this Ananda and love, the difference is very subtle. Ananda, in its own right, Ananda, oneness, bliss, it is, the divine himself, an aspect of the divine, if we want to put it like that, but the most important aspect of the divine. But when Ananda leans upon earth to dance in the sand, even enters the slime, enters into darkness, it becomes love. So love is Ananda of oneness, entering into the manifold Ananda. It is through love. When it enters into creation, it becomes love. It's an act of love. So love and Ananda are two ways. In fact, three of them. It's a triumvirate. Love, beatitude, and Ananda. They go together. So Ananda is the origin. Love is when it leans down, and beauty is the final product. It's like, beatitude in everything, beauty of thought, feelings, beauty of life. But before we can receive that ultimate Ananda and ultimate love, we have to go through an intermediary preparation. And that preparation is done by Mahalakshmi, which we see in the four aspects. First, Mahalakshmi comes and prepares us for a love which is closer to a human kind of love. If you read through Mahalakshmi, she's little more tangible, because but divine love can be tremendous. So Mahalakshmi's grace, Mahalakshmi's charm, Mahalakshmi's sweetness, Mahalakshmi's creations of harmony and beauty, they prepare us for the still greater perfection which will come with Ananda and the open play of divine love. In one of the letters to Dilip Kumar Roy, Sri Aurobindo indicates that. And he says that, to ultimately to establish divine love and Ananda is our goal. But we have found by experience that it cannot be done till the truth consciousness has laid its base. So this is the whole where we stand. So supramental, then that will come. Shri Krishna brought to the world freedom and delight, and we know what happened later on is Mahabharata. So, and later on, even in Shri Krishna's school, we see that there was an infighting and massive destruction. So, this time, they don't want to do it like that, and they want first the solid foundation. Yes.
So, are the personalities that are mentioned, because it's a plural here? So, are they ananda and love? They are the actual personalities.
Yes, and beauty. You see, when we read the Dashmahavidya of the Upanishads, which we, again in Mahalakshmi, we'll see the sense of beauty. But beauty, when we take the Upanishadic understanding of the 10 levels at which the great goddess reveals herself. So the lowest is Dhumavati. She's all covered with smoke of ignorance. But the highest is Tripur Sundari. The beauty unparalleled in all the three worlds. So beauty is another personality. So we have beauty, ananda, we have love. All these have to manifest. Purity, this is another. So there are aspects of the Divine Mother which are yet waiting. First, these four will prepare our earth nature. Maheshwari, Mahakali, Mahalakshmi, Mahasaraswati. And when our nature is relatively ready with them, then it opens to the supramental infinities. And then it, begins to become ready for the Ananda and divine love.
So the other question as a human that we have is are these personalities sort of doing a trial and error type of thing, that they come down, try and come down, and they find us unreceptive, and then we'll have to come back and try again. Is that what it is?
Yes, we can use the word from a human point of view. It's like a trial and error. But to be a little more, compassionate towards us humans, they are, as when mother was, I'll answer it in a very different way. When mother was asked, is God slow or man slow? She said, from the human standpoint, it is God who is slow. From the divine standpoint, it is man who is slow. But in the supreme wisdom, everything is as it should be. So what we call as trial and error, like with any human endeavor, is actually a preparation and many steps of preparation. So now it's a question of whether the preparation can take place in one go, or the preparation will take several steps. Now usually it takes several steps. To give an example, if you read Auroville Charter, now there have been attempts earlier to create the same thing, one of them being when mother was as Queen Hatshepsut and there was a sun temple with the sun charter. Now what she was asked that this conception was already there. She said yes. So why didn't it manifest? She said, because why was it brought down? Because the time was not ready. She said, because the memory had to be preserved in the mind of the race. So if we look at it, let's take another thing, Ramarajya, conception of an ideal world, ideal kingdom. Now it didn't take place even during the reign of King Rama. I mean, there was a small little problem leading to all kinds of imperfections. Yet it creates the stamp on the race and takes us one step further. So if we look at it only as a trial and error, it's not like an all or none phenomena. It's like one step, one step, one step. Now, we could take a giant leap, possibly. So, in that sense, yes, one wishes that there was a giant leap. And hopefully this time we should be able to cross over in one giant leap, at least a sizable number of humanity. That's what she has, foreseen.
Does anybody else have any questions?
So Alokji, the reason why she is foreseeing that this time there will be more of humanity, what is that main reason? Obviously, it's not logical.
Okay, yeah. So there are two levels of seeing of the avatar. We have seen it, we must have already read it in the Mother, that the avatar acts, the Mother is not all above. She is also here. Partly she veils. Now, at one level, when the avatar is identified with the human level, because he has to work here, he veils his own higher, sense. And therefore he acts as if nothing is ready, everything has to be prepared. Will it, won't it? We don't know. That kind of state. But at the another level, when he identifies with the supreme wisdom, well, it is inevitable. So mother says, even Sri Aurobindo was asked this. He says, yes, there is a state of consciousness in which it is evident and it is bound to be. Now, where is the problem? The problem is that which has already been decided. See, one part. Now, step one is that it has been decided that the earth will become divine. This is uncontested and it's logical, because whatever is the origin, it will eventually go into that direction, which is what, the whole logic of creation is. But the problem is only in space-time. So time means a field of play of forces. And space means how they come together, how they are, separated. And this is where the inconscient has its say. But at the same time, because she was not depending on human beings, but on the forces which are holding us back. So her conviction, even at a human level, let's say as an avatar, why did she say it? Well, just as when Rama was near Ravana, when, Kumbhakarna was eliminated. So there was a fair degree of chance that now, the battle is won. But Meghnad was there. Then Meghnad is eliminated. Now there is a reasonable amount of chance that Ravana will be, won over. So similarly, she saw that in the inconscient there are these 4 asuras. Asuras is, this term has a lot of connotations, but going back to, the forces of darkness, which the original 4 beings who became their opposites. She was simultaneously working on them, because she knew if you leave to human beings their choices, then it's like God telling us, well, sorry, you were not ready. And man saying, but you could have pushed through the whole thing. Okay, so she was working on these 4 asuras, and she was in that process, she said very clearly that 2 of them, the asura of unconsciousness, has chosen to be converted. And there was another asura, darkness, he also got converted. Now there were 2 who were remaining, death and falsehood. Now, in one of her experience, much later, I think it is 70, she speaks about indirect hint that even death is gone. Not indirect enough, but a direct hint enough that death has gone. And towards the end, 1972, there is a message where she says, before dying, falsehood rises to its full swing. And with regard to falsehood, she gives a very interesting conversation. She says, this fellow has come to me and he has told me that I know eventually I have to surrender. But I have the freedom, because universe is built upon freedom, and I am going to create as much chaos as I can. And the mother simply smiled. Now this is a game taking place on a very vast scale. So we may ask, why didn't she destroy him? What is the big deal for the Divine Mother to destroy? So this question was asked to her. She said, my child, I can easily destroy. But now we come to the human part. Within us, there are lots and lots and lots, almost every human being harbors within him this poison of falsehood. She says, if I apply this absolute power, do you understand what it means? Everything that is supported by falsehood gets destroyed. So, this was her dilemma, the divine dilemma. On one side, to apply the absolute power, which may have meant the entire earth going into blazes, which is not what she wants. The other is to gradually put pressure through whatever means available. When a teacher teaches, he does all kinds of tricks, or when moms, they know better what all do they do with children. So apply gradual pressure. Sometimes we yield, sometimes we still hold back the falsehood, and slowly, at least she wants a sizable number of humanity to be ready to take the leap. And that's what she has prophesied, how it will come about. So she says, now that the supramental truth consciousness has started manifesting, the certitude started with that. So what it is going to do, it is going to increase the pressure, mount the pressure upon humanity. Till eventually, a sizable person will be open and ready for being taken up into the new creation. Now that sizable person could be 2,000, 10,000, 50,000. I mean, we can take figures. 50,000 is the Auroville figure she chose about. There is a tipping point. So all that, let's say that there is a figure X. And once that is ready, till then there will be pressure on the whole human race. Once there is a sizable proportion of people who are reasonably ready, they are suddenly taken up into the new creation. What happens to the rest? She says a large number of humanity is going to collapse. She did foresee that. What about those who are left in the middle, limbo? She says, well, in humanity, there are two kinds of people. One who are ready for the effort of transformation. They are taken up for the new creation. What about those? They are goodwill. They have the goodwill. They are good human beings and they do want to come up, but they are not ready for the full effort. So they become a higher humanity, which is going to become a link between the chimp and the supramental beings. What about the distorted, perverted kind of humanity? She says it's an abortive attempt and it will collapse back into the animal creation. Now, this is very much like what Shri Krishna says in the Gita, and she has said it has been prophesied in the Gita. How does the Gita put it? Paritranaya sadhunam, vinashaya cha duskritam, dharma sansthapanathaye sambhavami yuge yuge. So this is exactly what will be the action of the new consciousness. Now why the delay? Because she wants as many people to get into the supramental ship out of love and compassion. She doesn't want, she knows so that, there are how many, 10, 15, maybe 100. That experience of her is there in February, I think 1960, where she sees, or 59, where she sees that there are beings who are getting ready for the new creation. But there are others who are not, they are being sent back. So the delay is, maybe we may say God, but it is out of compassion. Because if she applies the absolute pressure, destroys these beings, large number of humanity, almost everybody goes away. So she comes wearing the masks, sometime of corona, sometimes of something else, to turn us inward. At one of the places, Mother says, at the hour of God, she says that such difficult moments come to earth so that we can turn inwards and seek the divine help. And she doesn't give up on us. That's why she is putting pressure slowly, like, you raise the flame too high. Then the khichdi which is being cooked is burnt. You make it too slow. Then again there is a problem. So the right temperature, the right pressure, which only the divine can handle. So that is the reason for the delay, and that is why. So we can't hurry up because it's a collective thing. Even if you are more ready, if you are less ready, yet we have to wait till all reasonable number are in the ship or the bus, if we want to put it. And then it's like, let's start. And that would be the day when we will start seeing many more things than what we are witnessing now. It is still like, come up, hurry up, still that call, which is going on. And that call is not, for the divine 10 years, 20 years. The call goes on. Yes.
Alokji, so going back, this is an eternal question which always bothers me, is back to creation.
I love the phrase eternal question. Yes.
Because it's like, if everything starts in purity, is it because each manifestation of her, I don't know what the right word is, decided to be individual, which is why this ignorance and falsehood came in the first place? I mean, what is the point if we were born in purity? Then why go into the inconscience and this whole game? I mean, this thing of God's Leela is just not sufficient for me to get my head around.
I get your point. See, this is truly an eternal question. Why he started the game at all? Now, I have a humorous way of answering it. Because, from a human perspective, when we are tortured, when we see suffering around, then this question arises. Supposing everything was wonderful, we would have said, it's so nice, thank God the Leela started. Now take an example, very simple example. You want to make a house or you want to make a mega city, right? Now what happens? All of us are called, let us imagine that a mega city, and we are all told, look here, we want to start this project. So everybody says thumbs up, yes, great. So we thank the mayor and we all are part of the project. Now we don't know, there are many things which are going to take place. But once we say yes, then we go ahead, because this mega city would mean really a manifestation. Otherwise, the mega city, is all, everybody is sitting inside the Lord as one. Or you want to put it another way, we are the Lord and we all decided. That's how it is in Savitri. There was a round table conference where we all as, little spark came together. And he showed us, look here, great adventure, keen. So what kind of adventure? Look, immense shadow. Want to take a bungee jumping? We said, okay, this is something new. We are getting bored out here. It's a way of story. So we said, let's go in. So we knew there is a problem. So we asked him, okay, look here, we are jumping into it. What is the guarantee? He said, I'll be there with you. I will also jump. We jump together. And the Divine Mother, I'll be there. So now we look at it from this side of the story, it's a cruel game. And nobody can deny it, if we see the so-called hard facts of existence. The moment you cross onto this side, you realize it's a play. It's like, at one level, it's about success, failure, defeat, which is what, makes the game very unpleasant. Because we are striving for things which the game was never meant for. But when we look at it from another perspective, this is the joy of the play. What does it matter whether one won the cup, lost the cup? Then everything helps in the growth of consciousness. That's why the mother said the problem is, we have put the cart before the horse. And what is it? We think the aim of life is to become happy. Now, when we see there is unhappiness, we start ultimate last buck stops with God. Why did you make this game, which is so unhappy game? Whereas the aim of life is to progress. Now, the more you progress, the more you are happy. So this is one. Now, the moment we plunge, now the other part, that why inconscient. Now, when you want to play an extreme game, again, as a story I am saying, would you watch a match if there is a, match between India and, New Guinea cricket match? There's no fun in that. So there is a fun in taking the greatest possible challenge. This is there in human soul, immortal soul. When we discover it, we realize that, this is so wonderful. That's why it says, find your psychic being. Because at the mind level, it's all mind-boggling and confusing. There will never be a perfect answer. But the moment the soul comes into play, it says, wow. It's like we are chosen for this great adventure. It's so wonderful. Then you don't mind. I had a very interesting conversation, one Auroville international meeting. And, one person was saying, it's so difficult. Auroville is so difficult. This problem, that problem, 100 problems. So one of them made a very interesting remark. He said, Auroville is interesting because it's challenging. You see the same thing. So, thus, for the soul, for the mind, it can be disgusting, annoying, pestering. For the soul, it is challenging, invigorating, even intoxicating. So, it depends on the stance we look at it. At the level of the mind, we can go as close as this, that God took the extreme challenge and we as souls knew that we are indestructible, immortal. So, let's embark the journey. What is there? Forms will get broken. We'll have many experiences on the way. Sweet, bitter fruits of life. But eventually the thing will be far, far more complex and beautiful. It's like, when we have, why this much complexity? Well, it's like, when we want to create perfection out of 4 cards. So, we want to make or 4 bricks, we want to make a little place. Now, what are the combinations? Very few. Imagine doing with 64 bricks. You make a fascinating world. Imagine with 10,000. We in computer, we have how many? 64 or I don't know how many we have. Now you can play with it. So as the soul grows, it wants to take a greater and greater challenge of difficulty. At the same time, look at ignorance in this way, that it is also a shield. How is it a shield? Now see, for a long time, when we are in ignorance, we don't even think about perfecting the world. We want to somehow lead a cushy life. So this ignorance shields us from the greater effort. And this effort of somehow managing life, doesn't matter, God is there, not there, or we pray to God to get some help at the most. And when we have to complain, ultimately last fellow down, up the... But the day we awaken to the possibility of greater perfection, actually we are around the corner. So the mother said something very interesting, that when aspiration wakes up in a human being, it is the sign that it is the last birth for freedom from ignorance. So the fact that we have begun to feel, some of us, see, majority of human beings don't care. If we talk about divine perfection and all, it's like, let's make it humanly perfect with human ways. But, so there is no divine element in it. So this is a shield. Ignorance protects us from a greater labor. But the day we open up and have this aspiration that there is a greater possibility and a greater aspiration comes, then we understand the enormity of the effort. But actually, we have already covered a large distance. So you see, it works both ways. So ignorance, for a long time, the baby develops in the womb. That's the most challenging stage when it is being born. And think about the baby 1 year. I mean, doctors all around. Well, when we grow up, we think about our challenges, but think about the most challenging moment when the baby is coming out of the womb into this birth. We just don't know what's going to happen. Cord around the neck, breathing, not breathing, asphyxia score. 1 year, doesn't know, it doesn't even have a depth perception. And yet, the baby is carried through. There would be many, of course, infant mortalities, but the baby is carried through till it reaches a point of conscious effort. So ignorance, even in ignorance, progress is going on. But we are saved the labor of, oh my God, I have to leap this much. So it works both ways. So ignorance was necessary for a long time to allow us to develop through the little challenges of life. And when we have navigated through the little challenges, small children are told first standard, second standard, third standard, oh my God, what a big thing I have achieved. Cambridge, oh wonderful. And then when they have got all the degrees, then what happens? Now you have the real challenge. So this is a two-stage progress. And those of us who feel like that have, hopefully, who aspire, they have crossed this first step. And we must know that for us it is round the corner. Whereas for many others, they don't even care about it. So you see, it works that way. But those who are round the corner begin to feel, which is very good, compassion that look, so much of, humanity, what is this suffering? But just try and ask them, would you want to participate in a new creation? They want a bottle of beer, that's it. So it works both ways, okay? So there is a wisdom which is there in this plan, as close as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, that you pointed out very correctly that ignorance was necessary. So the Dev Mata Aditi, so Devas, gods and Asuras, they were born together in same ashram of Vasishtha. Aditi was the mother of all gods, and her sister Diti was the mother of all Daityas.
Yeah.
They were both granddaughter of Lord
Kashyap.
Brahma.
Yes.
So it was very purposefully ignorance. They meant that ignorance should go on with the truth as well. So
Yes.
I won't say truth, but the gods. So truth is above the gods and asuras.
And asuras, that's right.
Yes. So Satyam Param Dhimai. They said the truth is the ultimate consciousness, and that should be the only goal of devas and asuras, everyone. And Gandhi says that truth is essence of all moralities, which applies to mankind of today. If you follow just truth, you don't need any religion. So,
yes,
I fully agree. Ignorance is very important.
Yeah.
So it is root cause of vidya, avidya and vidya. They say the vidya is the root cause of all human sufferings and falsehood.
Yes. Yes, this is a very fascinating story, incidentally, and I am resisting the temptation to go into it unless somebody, Diti and Aditi and their children born to Rishi Kashyap, they have the same father and they have two different mothers. And this, like many stories of the Vedic cycle and Puranic story, they are very symbolic stories. So Asura and, Asura is a different thing. Initially Asura and Sur, in the original Vedas, they are not opponents. They are two aspects of one reality. Asuras represented force and the Devas represented knowledge. And in the one consciousness, they are united. That's why it is beyond Asuras and Devas. But later on, because force without knowledge has a tendency to, lose track, whereas knowledge still can be a safeguarding thing. And that's why they wrestle and embrace, because they cannot do without each other. So, but man's consciousness coming to its practical implication, the practical implication is diti, datya, do, too. That's what ignorance is about. Avidya is, beautifully. Whereas aditi, the infinite, undivided consciousness, where there is the consciousness of the one infinite. So, this is a two-stage process. We are born in the consciousness of avidya, or rather we are born as asuras, but by spiritual conversion we become devas and go beyond. So this is man's journey. It is not like some are devas and others are asuras. Well, all of us have within us the divisive consciousness, and by spiritual conversion we become devas. And what are the signs? Now I am bringing it to the pragmatic level. It's beautifully described in the Gita. Chapter 16, and I feel it's a must read. How do the asuras operate? Their operating system is all about me and myself. How do the devas operate? The operating, not the Puranic devas are, pretty, worse than human beings sometimes, but the deva type is that which operates from the larger sense. Deva type does not live for his own selfish aim. That's why the devas are working incessantly in creation to bring light, like, Ganesha to remove obstacles by the power of knowledge. Why should he work? He can say, I am, child of Lord Shiva and Mother Parvati. What business I have to work in, everybody's life and start removing obstacles. But you'll never hear this about the asuras. Asuras want to grab everything, including from the heavens. They want to get everything that the higher worlds can give, but without the effort, without the readiness and preparation. They want to snatch it. So this is also there in many of the stories. One of the stories of Shiv Puran, that also takes up that why doesn't Mother just give us the new world? So one story I'll share. So Diti, Datyon ki mata, she goes and complains to Lord Shiva. She says, you are being very partial. So Shiva says, nobody ever told me this. So how come? He said, see, all the good things are for the gods. And what about my children? So like any other mom. So he says, okay, what do you want? They should also go to heaven. He says, done? Done? So he says, very simple, I will manifest myself as Somanatheshwara. And the Lord of Delight, that he is Soma has worshipped. He says, so what about that? He says, nothing. Asuras can come there, offer little milk. Milk is knowledge. Little bit of, it's enough. Just a little bit of knowledge, and they will go straight to heavens. So she says, really? He says, of course. Take my word. So now, Shiva has said, who can resist? Neither Vishnu nor Brahma, all of them have to agree. He is force incarnate. So all the asuras go, they offer, they enter into heaven. Now Indra is, wondering, ye kya ho gaya? So they all go to Lord Ganesha. He says, just wait, it is his play. Because this is his way of explaining to Diti what is the real issue. Issue is not about going into heaven. So they go into heaven and they are roaming around. Lovely, what a lovely, promenade, and what a lovely, alcoves and beaches, and this is so wonderful. Heaven is heaven. Till, they see Kamadhenu. So they ask, what is this cow? They said, it will fulfill all your desires. Is it? Now the asuras start fighting that I'll keep in my house. Now Kamadhenu is everybody's, but they want to keep it in their house. Wherever they see anything, they want to appropriate and keep with them. So after some time, it is not Devasur Sangram, but the asuras start fighting within themselves. And heaven becomes hell. So ultimately they go, because nobody can stop Lord Shiva. So they go to Jagannatha, Adya Shakti, Aditi. Now Aditi is in a dilemma because after all her sister and her Lord Shiva has given the permission. So what does she do? She tells again Ganesha, you have to remove this obstacle. You stay put, don't allow any more asuras to enter. So he stays put. Now on one side, Shiva's word, on the other side, Mother Aditi's word. This is a fascinating story because the second time Shiva wants to, eventually says, Ganesha, you remove from there. Let them go. And that's when Mother Aditi appears and she says, no, unless they are ready, they cannot go enter into that because it will create chaos and disorder. Now this is a very symbolic story. Mother Diti understands that the problem is not about this or that person, it's about the consciousness. So the change of consciousness is the fundamental thing. We may belong to any, which we may live in an ashram, doesn't matter. But if the consciousness is not changed, we are the same people. And whatever we may carry, that, we have a badge that, I am a prosperity holder, allow me to enter. Well, show me your consciousness. This is her vision of 1960, which I was referring to. They're the only criteria whether one is ready to enter into the new creation or not. She says that they saw the substance. She said the criteria was neither moral nor intellectual. It was purely psychological. It was purely to see what is the attitude, what is the substance, nothing else. It was none of those criteria that we think, that, gods are very moral beings, far from it, incidentally. But it's about something still greater. It's about the manifestation of truth. So whoever is ready crosses over. So one has to be prepared and become an adhikari for the Swarga Bhog. If we want to snatch it, we will be nevertheless the same people. And you give to monkeys, we know what's happening with the nuclear armament now in the hands of all kinds of people and how dangerous it is. So this idea of everybody having the same adhikar over everything is to create another kind of chaos in the world which we see today. There is something called as adhikar bheda. And all this preparation, readiness and effort is to become an adhikari for what is being served to us. Otherwise we will have apach, indigestion, spiritual indigestion from Swarg Bhog. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, what is an adhikari, please?
What is Aditi?
Adhikari.
Adhikari, okay, I'm sorry. So, Adhikari is somebody who deserves something. Now, it's an ancient idea of adhikar bhed, mean who deserves it, who doesn't deserve it. It's an idea which in modern times is an anathema. We don't believe in that because modern times everything should be for everybody, right? This is how it is. Though in practice it doesn't apply. Every time you have a competition, you are actually trying to determine in whatever crude way who is ready and who is not ready, though it's done on a purely outer level. So adhikar bhed means simply that whether a person is ready to receive what is being offered or not. Now in ancient time this was very much respected. That's why we see the story of Eklavya, which is much misunderstood because modern perspective, he has a right. Why can't he? He should also learn archery. But in those times, there was their own way of determining whether a person is ready to receive a kind of knowledge or not. Now, it was an imperfect way, without a doubt. By the time it was Mahabharata, it was, imperfect. But there are stories, very interestingly, I'll just narrate one story to speak about Adhikar Bhed. How this story shows how a system of selection for those who are ready for the higher knowledge, how it can get corrupted, and how the Rishi with his deeper wisdom, understanding the spirit behind the rules, changes it. So the story goes that there is a boy called, Satyakam. So he is born of, a lady called Jabali, and he says, I want to have the higher knowledge, Brahmagyan. So there is Rishi Gautama, so says, you please try, but everybody can't get into that school. So he goes and asks Rishi Gautama, I want to learn the higher knowledge, so please enroll me. He says, well, I have to see whether you are an adhikari or not. So how to know the adhikari? He says, go back to your mom and say, I want to know the family details. This is one of the ways, people see whether, what is the background and everything. So it's a background check, whether to grant a visa or not. So the background check, he goes to mom and says, Mom, I know you're my mom. Tell me my dad's name so I can fill my form there. And look at the answer the mom gives. She says, my child, basically, my job is that of a maid. So I worked in many houses. And look at the subtlety with which the story is being conveyed. I have worked in many houses, so I don't know who your father is. Nothing else is spoken. I have worked in many houses, I don't know who your father is, but this much I can tell you for sure that I am your mom. So the boy goes and tells the Rishi that, well, my mom says, I don't know who the father is, but I am your mom. And what does the Rishi say? He says a mother who could say this is a very high and noble kind. Now look at it. She's outwardly a maid and obviously, being a subordinate, society is what they have been. It's also a reflection on, we talk about, everything wonderful being in ancient times. Well, if everything was wonderful, we would have launched then only. There were a select few, but the large society masses were still the same. So, he says, you can come in because your mother is of a very high and noble kind. Why? Because she has the courage and honesty to speak the truth. So the first level of adhikar, courage, honesty, truthfulness. But what is the way he gives him Brahmagyana? He tells him, you do one thing, you take 100 cows, which are very lean and thin, and go to a forest, come back when they are 400 and they are all healthy. So Gautama's wife says, what kind of a cruel fellow you are? He says, no, don't worry. I know my job. And because this boy has this urge to have Brahmagyana, because he's completely surrendered to his guru, that he knows what he is doing. And if this is the path for me, this is the path for me. So he goes, and because of this aspiration, the whole nature becomes his teacher. So he learns from a cow, he learns from a well, he learns from the fire. It's again a story that the guru is everywhere. If there is a keenness to learn, we will learn from every source. And if we are not keen to learn, we may be right at the feet of the master but learn nothing. So he goes there, and because of the aspiration, he comes back eventually with all these cows, tending them, selfless service, and he is full with the teja of Brahmagyana. But still it is not enough. So he says and bows down to his guru, Gautam Rishi, and says, now give me Brahmagyan. He says, but I can see that you are already received everything that you need. He says, no, I must receive it from you. Now this last lesson of humility. Now the moment he says, I must receive from you, the Rishi blesses him. And he becomes the next master. None of those, jokers who were learning through books in his ashrama. But this man who with the fire of aspiration grows. So this adhikar means, are we ready inwardly, intellectually, emotionally, vitally, even physically to receive this great truth which is being given to us? And the mother puts it in a different way. She says in integral yoga, if you read, there are no rules. People wonder, what are the rules? Do I have to be vegetarian? Well, doesn't matter. Do I have to wear white or yellow or orange or saffron? Doesn't matter. Do I have to put a tilak, put a mala? Doesn't matter. So do I have to sit for meditation at a fixed time? Doesn't matter. Meditation is not necessary. Do I have to do hatha yoga exercise? Not necessary. You can walk up and down the stairs, it's exercise. What is required? One simple rule, always behave as if the mother is looking at you, because she is indeed always present. Now this is a rule very, one can say, okay, this is okay. But tell me something concrete. Now, when mother is asked, she says something very interesting. She says, in ancient times, before you were initiated, you were tested. Adhikar bhed. And she narrates a story of ancient time when a boy is asked by the master to carry a trunk to another city, another village, and he's given only one instruction: don't open and see it. Now without a lock, that too. I is curious. What is it? And he has not even put a lock. If it is something so precious, he should have locked it. Now after some time, as they say, curiosity killed the cat, he opens it. And there is a little mouse which jumps out and goes away. He tries to catch, he cannot. And he comes back and says, I'm sorry, but you should have told me there is a mouse. He says, it was not the mouse. It was to see whether you have the capacity to obey. Because this is the first lesson. Obedience is a sign of surrender. If we say we have surrendered to the mother, we have read it here, no? The tamasic surrender, I have surrendered to the mother, but I am doing everything which is contrary. At least I must recognize that I am not surrendered in these parts. I am not able to really obey her. So, she says in integral yoga, there are no such tests, which used to be done in ancient times. There are amazing such stories. And I am resisting the temptation not to get into them. But in integral yoga, the tests come very subtly. And she says, don't think they will come when there are big events in your life. Not at all. The trivial events. Somebody passes by and say, hey, you are looking sick today. Somebody is, you have given a, nice presentation, and somebody says, it was not really up to the mark. Maybe you could have done better. Now, that's the subtle test. And she says, there are three kinds of beings which test us. There are spiritual beings, forces, they also test us. There are forces of universal nature, and there are adverse and hostile forces. So they will not allow us to go. Divine doesn't test us. This idea that Divine Mother tests us is not true. She knows us. She is on our side. She is the one who will whisper us, this way. No, this is the route. Quietly. If we open to her, even she will take us through the mouth of darkness towards light. She is the one on our side. She is not testing us. But there are cosmic forces. There is the cosmic play. And we have to be the adhikari. So universal nature will test us by saying, all this is too difficult. This is natural. I get angry. So it's okay. What's wrong with being angry? Universal nature. Adverse forces. They will press upon anger and make it much bigger than it is. Hostile forces. Abnormal depressions. Despair. And the spiritual and divine forces which will offer halfway homes of the spirit. Supramental, you know what? It's very difficult. Who knows whether it's there or not. Come, I'll give you a crash course in nirvana. How many days, sir? 1 month. 1 month. Then you think, one life. I don't know how many lives for transformation. This is a crash course. What do I have to do? Nothing. $5,000. Pounds, sorry. Maybe the rates are much less. Excuse me. But you don't mind shelling £1,000 and doing a crash course. After 1 week, get a certificate of nirvana. But Sri Aurobindo doesn't do any of that. Why? Because he wants to be true. He doesn't want to, us not to know the challenges and the difficulties. That's why the first page of the mother, many people get frightened. Do not imagine that truth and falsehood can stay. This was asked to mother also. She said, no, grace does not recede. But the impression of the person is, I think it was put up also on the Auromira that, I love that. That comes every week, very beautiful, that the grace does not recede. It is we who, by turning away, because we are not receptive, so it gives an impression that the grace has receded. The grace never recedes. So all this adhikar bhed is to prepare us for the readiness to receive. Now, we may not be immediately an adhikari, doesn't matter. If we are on the path, at least we believe we will become adhikari one day. This is how it has to be seen. That even if today we are not, this in synthesis is described very beautifully in the chapter on self-consecration. That we may not be ready immediately to take the plunge, but let's move on. So one day we cross that, subtle line, unseen line, and we realize that from a believer and a devotee, we have become a disciple of Mother and Sri Aurobindo. Now this line is an unseen line in this yoga. Nobody will tell you that, now you are a disciple, you have been initiated. So you have to go by this feel that you have a call for the path, or simply you are turned to the Mother. Sri Aurobindo has given indications. When Mother was asked, how do I know that I am initiated into this yoga? She said, when I say I have initiated someone, it means I have revealed myself to that person. So she is no more Mother Mira Alfasa from France. She is the Mother. You ask logic? Well, I don't know. I feel it like that. That's it. All who are turned to the Mother are doing my yoga. Or some people have a call for the path. So he has given some indications. But nobody will tell. Nobody in ashram will say, okay, from today you are a disciple. Even if you join the ashram, 95%, Mother herself has said, are not for the yoga. Only handful are for the yoga. So it is these tests prepare us for actually taking the plunge. That's how it is. And Swami Vivekananda also said very interestingly, he said, first read, then think, then meditate. Let that idea occupy us so completely, then one day we will take a plunge. So taking the plunge is where the journey begins. Before that, it's a preparation. And that's what is the adhikar. Yes.
So Alok Bhai, I'm just taking you up on one of the things you just mentioned, about the situation where we have the real tests, even the most trivial things.
Yes.
You said, you gave an example of somebody came and said, you did that lecture, but it could have been better.
Yes.
Okay. And that is a very common situation,
Yes.
that's an example. So, part of our reason for this workshop is, changing ourselves.
Yes.
So using that same example, what would be the way to handle such a situation, to say, you've done something within yourself such that you are able to cope with such a little test in a trivial event?
So when this happens, and it happens all the time in number of ways, first step is to look inside that what is in me that reacted. Now this reaction may not be outwardly manifested. It's like inwardly, oh, this fellow, who is he to judge me? It can start by that. Meaning that why I have a sense of superiority to start with. So I have to understand that I have to recalibrate myself and practice humility, because without humility, walking the path is very dangerous. If I walk with the idea that I'm a big man, I'm a great man, then I've already started going downward without realizing it, digging a ditch right by the side. So first thing is to look inside and become conscious about one's reactions. Where is this reaction stemming from? This is one. Now, if we discover that the criticism was correct, maybe there was actually a flaw. Fine. So I look inside and discover why this flaw came. The divine work should be flawless. And I'm giving an example of divine work. It can apply to any kinds of work. So I may look, let's take a different example that, one gives a lecture in, like, let's say in medical field and other things. So you discover that, I had prepared well for the lecture, but today I had a fight at home. And it came and interfered with my expression. So there is something one has learned, that one was not in the right state of consciousness. So one didn't allow the divine to flow through. Maybe I was self-conscious. Maybe I was looking for praise. Maybe I was looking for a promotion. 100 things. So one begins to become more aware of where the flaw is. The flaw comes basically from the ego and desired self. This is the two main interferers. Ego because it limits the scope, and desired self because it creates a lot of noise. So when these two go away, we become more and more self-unconscious, unconscious word using in the different sense, and more conscious of the divine working through us and in us, then the work also becomes more and more perfect. That's what Shri Krishna says in the Gita, yogaha karmasu kaushalam. And it says the more you become impersonal, the more surrendered, the more the work will become perfect. Whether it's a lecture or washing utensils or our human interactions of everyday life. So this is how we have to grow. Now, what if we discover, no, everything was fine. Like, I have a criteria by which I know about a talk, whether it was nice or not. Nice is not a nice, but, whether it was. So I know that whether it flew from there, and I know it by the kind of ananda which I experience inside. Now, somebody may say that, you forgot that point or this point, doesn't matter, because I've experienced that joy which comes from the creative influx. There are other instances, and they are real things I'm saying, where people say, oh, that talk was very nice, but I know it was not very nice. Because I know that there was something which was interfering with it. So the criteria is inside. So then we realize the second step is that, well, if human opinions, human judgments have not much meaning. Mother gives that example of somebody appreciating a painting, and, one doesn't even know a painting. And one is, saying, oh, this is wonderful, which was nothing but palette scrapings. That's how she, spoke about was that Rembrandt. So she said, oh, this is wonderful. And he said, nobody was buying my painting, but he is asking something which is my palette scraping, say modern art. So you see, birth of modern art. And well, that's only indicates that human opinions ultimately are worth nothing. Whose opinion is worth is, of course, the divine. And the divine's way is that he does not judge, but just corrects us. And the indication that the divine is happy with us is that there will be an increase in joy, and there will be an increase in peace. All divine action is accompanied with a sense of peace and joy. And if we don't have access to that, then the opinion of those who are in contact with truth in some way or the other. So, a lot of people, well, they may like, even equally, they may like. But that should not puff us up. Oh, see, so many people appreciate it. It doesn't matter. So it gives us an opportunity, as you rightly said, to work upon ourselves and improve ourselves. From a point where we are narrowly shut in an ego identity that I am Mr. So-and-so, to a point where, you are completely, all your identities are merged into the one. And you have no other identity except through the one and in the one. That is the state we have to arrive at. So neither praise, that's why the Gita insists, and Sri Aurobindo, if you see synthesis, maximum pages are dedicated to the practice of one thing, and that is equality. So we have to just practice equanimity. It's very beautifully explained both in the Gita and Synthesis of Yoga, how to practice equanimity, because it's the base for work of the divine in the world. Equanimity is not needed for a traditional jnana yogi. It's not needed even for a bhakti yoga. But for a karma yogi and for the yogi of integral self-perfection, we need equanimity, because otherwise we cannot. Because equanimity is the knot through which the work is done in the world. If I have to withdraw into, God through my ecstatic bhakti, I don't need equanimity. I just merge into the Lord and I am jumping, dancing, it doesn't matter. Or if I want to go into traditional jnana, it doesn't matter. Because I am not going to let that jnana translate into... in fact, I believe that works are a bondage. But any person following the path of the Gita and the path of Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga has to lay equanimity as the firm foundation. So, for all this and many other things, equanimity at all the three levels, physical level, the Gita summarizes in half a sloka, Sheet, Oshna, Sukh, Dukheshu, Hani, Labho, Jaya, Jeo. Even Guru Nanak says, Astuti, Ninda, Dau, Tyagi, Khoje Tab Nirvana. So basically it means that Shitoshn, the changes of weather, temperature outwardly, they shouldn't affect us. They affect us to start with. But we have to practice that indifference, that I am happy. Surrender is one of the ways of equanimity. Endurance is another way of equanimity. Indifference is a third way. A philosophical understanding is a fourth way of practicing equanimity. Whatever is the way. Shitoshna, the vagaries of nature. Sukh Dukheshu, things which create the sense of joy and sorrow, they both have to be surrendered. They are at the vital level, sukh, dukh. Hani, labho, again at the vital level, I lost so much and I gained so much. And jaya, jeo, one may win, one may lose. So, of course, to that we should add also the equanimity at the ideative level. Now, ideative level, we see, if we read the second chapter of the Mother, since, in that context, you'll see rejection. So he says all one-sided opinions and viewpoints of the mind. Otherwise there is a lack of equanimity. So let's say people interpret a scripture and say this is the only way. Now this is a lack of equanimity. This is how it is revealed to me. Maybe it is revealed in a different way to somebody else. Like that bonsai arrangement of flowers. The master arranges it and then leaves the scissor. Why? Because maybe somebody else may make it more perfect. So when we live with this state of wonder, childlike wonder, humility and equanimity, that this is what I could do or could be done through me, but there are better ways, different ways, then we arrive even at a mental equanimity. There are different ways of looking at it. And when we arrive at some kind of reasonable equanimity is still deeper. It's the equanimity of the soul. Ultimately, there is a whole long passage in Savitri, one of the longest, which comes in, the release from ignorance, where he says a vast unanimity ended life's debate. I am just giving a clue, we can search it later on. And it goes on to say that how all this, success, failure, everything is understood at the end of the day. His mind was free of all disputes and he was reposed in the self. Ultimately, it will deepen into the vision of the self in which there is perfect equanimity. But to start with, we should practice it. So all these things point out that we are not in a state of equanimity, which is an imperfection for yoga. So for yoga, we have to practice it. Yes. It's also what we value more. Do I value do I want to change myself according to what people may, praise or, may not praise? That means I'll go into a very different direction. It's ambition which may drive me. Or I want to change based on when the Divine Mother may say, bravo my child, and it's so interesting. It's the inner state. Amal Kiran, this one little example, then we'll take the other one. Amal Kiran once, made a little painting or something and he showed to the mother. Mother says, this portion is very good. He was wondering that, everything looks nice to him. Then he realized that when he was making that portion, he was constantly remembering her. You see, that inner state becomes so important. So we have to think, whom are we want to please? We want to please the world or we want to please the Lord? And that's a very, very difficult choice. Very difficult choice. And yet, at some point, we have to make that choice. I'm not saying we have to tell people, we don't want to please you. That's arrogance. But inwardly, we should be clear that whom do we want to live for? And then everything will become a path. Yes. Yes, sorry. Yeah, please, go ahead.
So even in sort of all the things you were saying also, so even if one is quite often feeling that peace, joy, in being surrounded by, for example, like these workshops, or listening to you, or listening to, other talks, or reading. I mean, Mother and Shogilas,
Reading, yes.
I mean, that just fills you, it's overwhelming. And at the same time, something still feels dissatisfied. Is
Yes.
it because one has experienced and knows that there is more, and which is why even at whatever level of peace and joy and calm that one is feeling at the time, is that in a way pointing to, saying, an invitation almost, that come, there is more?
Yes, of course, certainly. See, peace is one thing, satisfaction is another. Satisfied person is a dead person. So it's wonderful to keep that little divine dissatisfaction. In the life, divine Sri Aurobindo says that an animal is satisfied with his modicum of necessities. There are people who say we have a very satisfied life. And we know what it means. And the gods are content with their splendor. Both are unfit for progress. But it is human being who is the most dissatisfied of all. And therefore he alone can be seized with a frenzy to realize those splendors. So there should not be that. Of course, by dissatisfaction, it doesn't mean we should be restless, impatient, but we must know that whatever we may have achieved, is a way of saying, is nothing compared to what lies before us. So this dissatisfaction should be born out of humility. That's why in Isha Upanishad, so beautifully it says, avijñātam vijanata, avijñātam avijanata. He who thinks he knows it not. He who has not the thought of it knows it. Meaning thereby there is, and really, if we look at divine as infinite, who can say that I possess the infinite? Who can say that I have known all the infinite? Who can say that, I know everything about the absolute? None can, and that makes it so beautiful. Frankly speaking, it means always there is a wonder. Of course, then what is the difference? Well, there is a line we cross, beyond which we are out of ignorance. So, we are always in delight and peace, as you said, and we have crossed over from the fundamental ignorance. But there is no end to the wonders of the infinite. So even after crossing that line, the supermind is not the end of the journey. It is the starting point of a much more tremendous journey. But the difference is, below the supramental, we labor from asadoma, sadgamya, tamasoma, jyotirgamya, mrityurma, amritamgamya. After we have crossed the line, it is light to greater light, freedom to greater freedom, delight to greater delight. So there is a fundamental difference. But there is no end to the disclosures of the infinite. And in the smallest things, the mother speaks of a supramental experience where she says, the water running from the tap, the toothpaste, they are all dancing with joy. All of this is a disclosure. Now, this is amazing. And why not? We are born for that. In every element, in every fiber, we must experience delight. Each part in us desires the absolute. Even the darkest part, our smallest parts, have room for deepest needs. Nothing can be left out in the end. So, some dissatisfaction means that obviously it's a good reminder that, look, there is much more. So let's not rest and become bourgeois ideal. Now I have got peace and I'm so wonderful. I had the experience of, I had a vision of Divine Mother, and, I had this transcendent peace when I sit for meditation. I'm done with. Divine has no use of such a creature except in a museum. That here he is done with. We don't want to be museum specimens. We want to be workers on the field. Yeah? Okay, yeah.
Lovely. Anybody, any other questions?
Yeah, the truth and falsehood will continue to coexist on this earth consciousness until human soul completely rejects falsehood. Purposefully, falsehood is here. Casino will operate in city until all people say, no, I don't want to go to casino. So one day, the gods will say, oh, falsehood, go back to your pavilion now. But it's a long way. Yeah, that,
Yes, if left to human beings, it would not happen, but there is grace. So we must, lean on the grace. If left to us poor mortals, we don't even know what is truth and falsehood. When mother was asked that it is written in the Upanishad, Satyameva jayate nanritam satyene pantha vitato devyana. But we don't see that, good is winning. She said, first of all, each of us believes that I am a good guy. That is the first falsehood. I am good, others are bad. Then we discover, oh my God, even I have same things like everybody else. I am no special category. Then we start working, and it's a long journey, no doubt. But that's where she says, remember there is grace. She says that we are precisely living in an age when men are not left to act according to the strength or weakness of their own efforts. We are not living in that age. The grace is there, the help is there, and now with the supramental truth consciousness, we have everything which is there for the leap over. And let's, leap over the leap that only one monkey, Hanumanji, not monkey, but divine monkey, he was the key to man. So, he leaped over from this side to the other side and returned back. Let us hope that now we have at least 100,000 human beings who will leap over by the grace. So what does Hanumanji say? Same story applies. He wants to leap. And he says, I've forgotten. I don't remember that I can do it. So Jambavant reminds him first that, no, you are this, you are that. And then he says, oh, with the name of the Lord I can cross over. So this story is indicative that what we cannot do by our own efforts, the same thing, that's how the Gita ends. Wherever there is an instrument like Arjuna and wherever there is Krishna, there is victory. It's not either alone. So we must remember that in all our efforts, even a drop of effort, we have an ocean of grace backing up that little drop. So when we remember the grace, lean on it, we must do the effort. It's given to us. But we must know that whatever effort we may do, whatever ultimate, there is ultimately the grace which will fulfill. And that's what is the last passage. Maybe I can just read it before we, just the last part I want to read. One sentence, the power, but that the change may arrive, take form and endure. There is needed the call from below with a will to recognize and not deny the light when it comes. And there is needed the sanction of the Supreme from above. The power that mediates between the sanction and the call is the presence and power of the Divine Mother. The Mother's power and not any human endeavor and tapasya can alone rend the lid and tear the covering and shape the vessel and bring down into this world of obscurity and falsehood and death and suffering truth and light and life divine and the immortals ananda.
Please, if you have a few minutes, there's one sentence in 2 paragraphs before.
Yes, please.
Can I ask? Yeah.
Yes, please.
The rapidity and complexity of her vision and action outrun its stumbling comprehension. The measures of her movement are not its measures. Bewildered by the swift alteration of her many different personalities, her making of rhythms and her breaking of rhythms, her accelerations of speed and her retardations, her varied ways of dealing with the problem of one and of another, her taking up and dropping now of this line and now of that one, and the gathering of them together. It will not recognize the way of the supreme power when it is circling and sweeping upwards through the maze of the ignorance to a supernal light. Open rather your soul to her and be content to feel her with a psychic nature. It carries on. But that previous sentence, what does that...
Yes. See, basically it is very logical if we put it like that. If the mind could understand the ways of the Lord, then he would not be the Lord but something inferior to the mind. So here Sri Aurobindo is reminding us something which is self-evident, that the Lord's ways are not the ways that the human mind likes it to be. His purpose of punishing virtue with defeat, his purpose of making Kansa sit on the throne, his purpose of giving Trilok Raj to Ravana. Now, the human mind, which thinks linearly in a small space of time, cannot recognize the global way of the triple time vision in which the Lord acts. He does not act only on the immediate, he looks at the lives gone behind and lives that are going to come. Second, even there, that one way he deals with us doesn't mean the same way he will deal with everyone. You see, he may deal with one person. When mother was asked that, "Mother, we want to be like Champaklalji." She said, "Oh, is it?" Then she said, "Ask him how severely he has been dealt with." So, you see, to prepare, so different people, he deals very differently. To some, he gives the throne. This was also asked, that why does the divine give to people who are making all kinds of errors and chaos a lot of money? This question was asked. She said, well, the divine doesn't think like human beings, because if he were to think like that, then there would be no world. So what does he do? He says, okay, you take what you want. So what happens in the process? You realize what you have bartered and bargained for. So you see, it's like, when you have a pure diamond and you settle for something much less. You were to get the pure diamond, but you have settled for imitation, jewelry or maybe gold. And you say, okay, fine. So you take it. Now divine, why is he giving? He is giving because what you are losing is the pure diamond. So at some point, when you get it and realize that, look, that's what I am looking for, is a much more complete method than if he says, no, I am going to deny you the gold because you have to only try for the diamond. So the divine's way is like that. In giving, in not giving, heaven's greater love rejects the mortal's prayer. Line from Savitri. So this is why he's saying that divine methods cannot be known by the mind, because mind works linearly. Good and bad, good guy must get this, bad guy. The divine should value what I value. He doesn't. As simple as that. He should act the way I act. He doesn't. He should punish. The divine doesn't punish. Actually, he never punishes anyone. If he punished, who will stand before and say, I can't be punished? Mother says, don't invoke justice, because if justice were to manifest, nobody will be able to stand. So divine vision is where he neither condemns nor punishes. These are all anthropomorphic ways of looking at the divine. There is something called as justice, but that's a different thing. It has to do with balance of creation. It is not about justice, to maintain the balance of creation. But what is true is that the divine constantly helps us to move forward, each according to his law of being, which is called as Swadharma. To a Kshatriya, he will say, go and fight. To a Buddha, he will say, go into the forest and meditate. And one may wonder, what is this divine doing? Both of us asked him, but Arjuna, he said, no, fight against your own people. And to Buddha, he is saying, go into the forest and meditate on the cosmic problems. That's where we have the whole idea of Yug Dharma, Swadharma, to allow for individual variations in our journey. It is because of this individual variation that the Gita speaks about Sudharma. Otherwise, it's very simple, tamas to rajas to sattva to spiritual consciousness. And that's what he is telling us. So how do we know about the divine ways? We will be bewildered. He says, bring out the psychic. Psychic knows it by an inner vision and feeling. And it is the only part which is directly in touch with the divine. But the mind cannot. Mind will be completely bewildered. So he's giving us a clue that bring out the psychic. First step. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, maybe we can just complete this sentence. Yeah?
Yeah. Can you?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Open rather your soul to her and be content to feel her with the psychic nature and see her with the psychic vision that alone make a straight response to the truth. Then the mother herself will enlighten by their psychic elements your mind and heart and life and physical consciousness and reveal to them too her ways and her nature. So that's the key given to us, the psychic being And the first step in this yoga is actually to bring out the psychic being. So with that wonderful, note, maybe we can stop.
Thank you very much, Alok Bhai.
Thank you.
We will stop by playing some music, Sunil Das music, to Canto 6, track 6. And before we all depart, a heartfelt thanks from all of us at Master for your participation. And we hope that we can ask you to join us again in the future.
Yes, thank you. It's a joy. It's a joy to be together. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. I feel like as if I'm in Pondicherry now.
Yes, thank you.